What's up, everybody? It's Coach Mills here, and today we're going to be breaking down the top 10 hardest characters to master. These characters take a lot of time to get good at, but once you do, you could be carrying every single game. But speaking of carrying, you can carry with today's sponsor, GameLeap. I partnered with GameLeap to make a 10-video VOD review and advanced concept course that is designed to help you climb as quickly as possible. And in addition, there are over 60 advanced guides on the website made by Grandmaster or top 500 players. So if you want to climb fast, have access to insane guides and content, do yourself a favor and go check it out right now using code MILLS in the links down below. Now, the first character that we got to talk about in this video is none other than Echo. Echo is actually a very strong pick if you master her, and a lot of people aren't really playing her because they just don't know how to play her. Echo is incredibly hard to master for a number of reasons. Not only do you have to know exactly how to teeter your aggression with your passivity, because it's really easy to get caught out and killed on Echo, but she has the potential to burst down low targets as well with that beam that does double damage if they're less than 50 HP. So it's a really safe balance that you have to meet there. And oftentimes what you should be doing is playing passive with your team, poking and waiting for a very specific key moment for you to go aggressively. On top of that, Echo is amazing at punishing enemies if they come in too close with that beam. I think she's a really underrated pick right now. And of course, Echo requires you to have pretty good understanding of a lot of characters in the game, because not only do you have to copy them on a whim, but you also have to land their ultimates properly. Like copying a Diva bomb, knowing how to Diva bomb, copying a Rhine shatter, and knowing how and when to shatter and where to shatter. Echo is a character that takes good mechanics, understanding, positioning, and game sense all in one. So yeah, she's a pretty hard character to master. Now, number 5 on our list actually gets a bad rap for being a character that has no aim needed, and it's Winston. And while Winston is not necessarily the most mechanically aim-dependent character, he is not an easy character to master at all. Winston has to surgically place himself exactly where he's needed, and in addition to that, he has to balance how much he goes in and when. A good Winston will never jump in unless he's killing the entire enemy team or he has the means to get out, and it's very specific. He has to know key cooldowns, enemy's position, and see gaps in those positions, which is not easy to do. In addition to that, his Primal Rage is one of the most difficult things to master in the entire game mechanically, so it's not fair to just say that a Winston doesn't need great mechanics, because his ultimate is so mechanically demanding. And on top of that, I would highly suggest, if you want to get good with Winston's ultimate, to go into a training range with unlimited ultimate and practice it in a custom game up against bots. Super simple, but really effective for learning Primal Rage, and not many monkeys do it, and they have to just learn through repetition in a game, which only happens like maybe 4 or 5 times throughout the course of a game. So you're going to get it tons more if you just set it up in an isolated environment. Now, moving on to the 4th most difficult character to master, we have Ana. And Ana requires a ton of things from you. She requires you to be good at hit scan fire with her primary fire when it's zoomed in. She requires you to be good at projectile fire with 3 projectiles that operate at different speeds: her unscoped fire, her nade, and her sleep dart. And you're going to have to be able to use these both defensively and aggressively. So a good Ana that has mastered Ana will not only make plays with these, but will also use them when under pressure and needed defensively. And there's a ton of incredibly high pressure scenarios for an Ana where she has to make a million decisions. Nanoing one person, sleeping a Genji, freaking nading the backline. Like, there's like a million things that you could do in a matter of seconds. And if you want to master this character, you have to properly actually juggle all these different things, which can be incredibly difficult. And Ana is one of those characters that I think if you become a god at Ana, whether it's positioning, mechanical skill, playmaking, you just become a god at Overwatch, because that's just how difficult this character is to master, and I definitely think that she's one of the hardest characters in the game. Now, we're moving on to number 3, and many of you will be surprised by this pick. Some of you might not agree, but it's Diva. She's actually one of the hardest characters to master. And you might be saying, Diva's easy. I just fly at people, I just shoot things, I eat a little bit of damage. Why is Diva so hard? But I'm talking about mastering this character. And the thing about Diva is it's all about APM, or actions per minute. A Diva can do so much every single second of a game. She can save her allies, she can stop enemy fire, she can go aggressive and make plays, and she can pivot on a dime. A good Diva is constantly stopping the enemy from getting impact and stopping their impactful plays, while at the same time managing her own aggression, trying to make plays herself. The sky's the limit with a good Diva player, and a Diva can micromanage almost the entire game, adding certain levels of impact in some areas and preventing enemy impact in others. I think it's important not to confuse base level value, which Diva has a decent amount of, for how hard it is to master a character, because Diva is definitely one of the hardest characters to master in this game, and if you don't think so, you're probably not close to that skill ceiling. Now, next up, we got to talk about number 2 on our list, and this is Tracer. Tracer is really hard to master. And at the base level, Tracer seems simple enough, but when you start to try to really get good at Tracer, you realize just how freaking fragile you are. There's many characters in the game that are literally trying to insta-tap you, and Tracer needs to not only dodge a lot of these, but consistently deal damage as well. You need high level of mechanics, ability management, proper spacing away from the enemy team, understanding the threats you'll face, what type of fire, what type of abilities, and a good Tracer has incredibly high mechanical skill and game sense, which is very difficult. You add to that the fact that you have a very small window of time to react to things, means that you have to have an incredibly high APM and high reflexes as well, or get very used to basically everything you could come across in the course of a game. On top of that, your pulse bomb is also a very mechanically demanding ultimate to hit consistently, and you add it all together, and a Tracer that has mastered the character can have so much freaking impact, perhaps one of the highest carry potential characters in the game, and she's definitely a character that is worth the many hours it takes to master her, but she is so freaking hard to master. Now, before we get to the hardest character in the game, in my opinion, to master, let's talk about some honorable mentions. I would say Zen is pretty difficult to position well with. I don't think he's necessarily incredibly hard to use his abilities, but to aim well with and to position well with, he can be pretty difficult. That's why he's only an honorable mention. Sigma is a character that you need to properly balance all your abilities with your shield, with your damage, and your rock, which is a skill shot. I think Sigma is pretty hard to balance all those things, but as far as how complex Sigma is, I think Diva has a higher skill ceiling, and that's why she's higher to master, and she's put on this list instead. Pharah is a character that you might think is pretty easy. You might think she's pretty simple, but when I talk about master this character, when we get to the peak of Pharah is incredibly difficult. Direct rockets, Pharah 1v1s, playing around your counters. A really great Pharah is just on a different level, but I really do feel like that only happens even higher than GM, like top 500 or even at the pro level. So that's why I'm only putting her as an honorable mention, because I think master is a little bit too vague here. And then last up is Genji. I do think that Genji is difficult to truly master, but it kind of really depends on what you mean by master here. If you just mean play Genji at a GM level, I don't necessarily think that that is the hardest, even close on this list. But if you're talking about be a top 10 Genji, an insane Genji, someone who basically just is flawless with their mechanics and their execution and their blades, yeah, that's very hard, and very few players could ever do it, in my opinion. So I'm not entirely sure. That's why I'm only putting him in the honorable mentions category. But before we get to the number 1 hardest character in the game, I want you to really quickly put who you think is the hardest character to master in the comments down below, and then put your guess, and we're gonna get right into it. And it's Kiriko. Kiriko is the new kid on the block, and Kiriko is freaking hard. There's a lot of things that basically make this character so damn hard. Let's run it from the top. The first one is the difference in hitting headshots and not hitting headshots is such a wide chasm that a good Kiriko that can hit a high number of headshots has so much more potential impact, which is just insane. The other thing is Kiriko often wants to play isolated from their team because she has a get out ability in an adjacent angle, actually trying to get kills and do damage, which is very untraditional for a support. So a lot of her value is actually directly tied to that primary fire. And then on top of that, she has the ability to teleport to her team on a whim and bail them out of a ton of situations, which she has to time very properly. And if she does, and she actually bails their team out right before they die, she can not only bail them out, but kill the person that is trying to kill them. And Kiriko requires you to actively manage all of these things: your teammates positioning, your positioning relative to the enemy, dealing damage, trying to hit headshots, and yeah, it just all combines to just be this like crazy difficult thing to truly master, and I don't even think we've seen close to what this character can do. And on top of that, her ultimate oftentimes needs to be done as a tempo ult, so it's not clear cut exactly when the perfect opportunity is for this ultimate, so you're gonna have to use it at very flexible times, which requires you to have a certain amount of game sense to make the right call regarding this, because proper use could actually turn a lost fight, but if you just waste your ultimate, then you're kind of throwing. So it's really difficult to master this character. I think she's the hardest character in the game, and you might agree, you might disagree, but if you don't, let me know in the comments down below. And go to the Game Leap website for the best guides that you will not find anywhere on YouTube that is going to help you climb as quickly as possible. If you really are dedicated to climb and you're stuck, or you really want to climb much quicker, then go check out the Game Leap advanced courses right now for 25% off using code MILLS in the links down below.